Spencer, what's going on, my man?
What up? How are you?
I'm rocking and rolling. How are you?
I'm doing it, man.
Heck yeah, I love to hear that.
One day at a time, right?
Hey, you know it. It's a new day. Any day that's 6 feet up is a lot better than the ones that are 6 feet down.
What's going on right there? So,
All good. So the question is, what got you into wrestling? Can you hear me?
yep, there you are.
Okay. All right, sweet. So the question is, what got you into wrestling?
What got me into wrestling? This is so my dad was a pretty big wrestler, right? So he kind of pushed it on me at kind of as a young age, just like first grade. I started wrestling, I want to say, but I lived in Wisconsin when I first started wrestling. So then my dad, whatever, drug me to a couple of youth practices, and I wasn't too good at wrestling right away. So then I got beat up by a girl. My first or second practice, I went in there. I wrestled with like a girl that was a couple grades older than me, and I left in tears, all sorts of different things. I had a meltdown, and my dad told him I was never wrestling again. All this sort of deal, and then so my dad got a new job that relocated him to Iowa. So then when I went to Iowa, which was second grade, the town I grew up in originally, so now it's a pretty big wrestling school, and all my buddies were wrestling, so I was like, I'll give it another shot. So I started wrestling again, and then that's when I fell in love with it, the support system and coaching stuff there, and then that's how I became who I am today, just from growing up in such a great town.
That's always a great way. And especially, I mean, going to Iowa, I mean, the what some people call like the land of wrestling. I mean, it's kind of hard to not wrestle being there.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, it's the truth. Growing up, every single kid, at least where I grew up, was like, "Hey, let's do wrestling. Let's go for wrestling." And and I tried playing basketball a little bit too when I was little. I did both, and then I was like, "Nah, all my time needs to get devoted to wrestling."
I was gonna say you can't play basketball and wrestle. Those seasons are at the same time. That's the main reason I didn't play basketball is because it was always wrestling season.
Yeah, I tried giving that a shot for like in second grade. I tried doing like a little AAU basketball team too, and then it just didn't work out very well.
Wanted to be a hooper. Man, that's crazy. And then ended up on the mat.
Heck
So
yeah.
so what made you choose NDSU?
Yeah, so I mean, originally going through the recruiting process, obviously talking to a lot of different coaches, a lot of different families, friends. NDSU at the end of the day, when I came up here, I met some of the guys, talked to the coaching staff over Zoom, which I mean, you probably know the coaching staff left over the past month. There's one coach that recruited me that's still here, so I chose NDSU because it felt like home. It's like kind of got a smaller town vibe to it, but there's also quite a bit of stuff to do here. So it's like, and then everybody on the team, the coaching staff, it all felt like family. I came here and it instantly clicked. A lot of small town kids. It just everybody introduced themselves. It just felt like this is the place where I feel like I'll get the most out of myself, not only on the mat, but as a human being, and be able to develop into who I am and who I want to be. And it felt like a great place to be able to become a better man. And with the old coaching staff, it was the same way. Nothing but respect to those guys, and they're part of the reason I was here as well. But with the new coaching staff, nothing but belief in those guys, and still having a chance to chase my dream and become a better person every single day. So yeah, it was. I mean, the whole recruiting process gets to be a lot on a lot of different kids. It's a lot of phone calls, texting, but at the end of the day, I just really I felt like NDSU was home from the start, kind of. Just I don't know. It's like when you step on campus, sometimes like it just clicks, and that's what NDSU did for me. So
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling. I mean, I was the same way. I mean, I originally played golf in college. That was mine. That was my main.
really,
I mean, I grew up, wrestling, same as you. Had,
Hmm.
three uncles, all on my mom's side that all wrestled, and two of them that wrestled at the University of Illinois, and so it just was something that basically from the time I could put shoes on, it was they were wrestling shoes, and
Yeah.
so for me, deciding to play golf in high school, after wrestling for a season and a half, and just I started to really get good at golf, and I was like, man, I want to play golf in college. I don't really want to wrestle. And so I had that same experience, and the sending emails and phone calls with coaches and all the different monotony that it goes back and forth. And essentially the one trip I took was to, it was a D2 school in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. It was 30 minutes from the town that I originally was born and grew up in. And that's exactly what you said. It was like you just kind of stepped on campus, and it was just like, oh, this kind of feels right. Like for what
Hmm.
I'm here for, like for what I'm here to do, like everyone seems like a good fit around me. Um, and I like that idea of, especially the getting the best out of yourself. I mean, that's kind of my whole big thing these
Hmm.
days is, every single day is an opportunity to get better, and you can live whatever future you want one day at a time. It's just you just have,
Exactly.
whatever you want, live that day out every single day and get a little bit better. And having that message and being able to spread that message now has become pretty cool. So what does your life look like off the mat? What is the Spencer Mooberry that's not on the, what does that guy look like? What are the off the mat aspirations? What type of major are, you
Yeah.
pursuing? And then what type of things outside of the sport are you looking to do?
Yeah. So I'm studying business administration with a minor in marketing. And obviously, at the end of the day, I'm not 100% sure where I want to go with that. I might end up coaching in my future too. I was thinking athletic director with being a coach, high school level. But yeah, I think who I am as a person has really kind of changed over the course of the past couple of years. And just growing up, being a couple hours, 6 hours from home, it allowed me to kind of mature at a faster rate than some people who have that right in their back door where they can go home and get their problem solved with their parents. You know what I mean? I don't have that option. So all my problems, I'm going to figure out myself. And I've really, really resorted to God and my faith over the past course of the year and built that pretty strong. That's a big piece of my life right now. And, I'm just always, I think so many people, especially at the college athletics level, even when you're succeeding in high school, you get bought into the end goal of being a national champion, being all state, whatever it is. But there's so much small things that go on in your day-to-day life that have nothing to do with sports but are also just as important if not more important, right? How I carry myself off the mat and how little kids look up to me in the future and how people view me as a worker is also going to be a very important thing because at the end of the day eventually I'm not going to put those singlet straps up again one time, you know what I mean? So I think
Exactly.
it's very important for just kids and athletes just to be able to focus on who they are as a person and what really their core values are and what they believe in because athletics, I mean, they can take you a long ways, especially now with your NIL stuff and all that, but there's still something to being, just a classy, respectful guy and trying to live that out. And obviously I have different personal goals for who I am and then I have different wrestling goals too and I chase both of them every single day. And it's the small stuff. I can't win a national title by tomorrow, right? It's every single day. There's something small. It's easy stuff that people don't do. That is what makes a difference. Everybody's training. Everybody's working hard. So it's the stuff that is easy to do and easy not to do. You know what I mean? Just whether it's your stretches, whether it's certain stuff like that, it's easy to blow off, but it's also super easy to do. And I think that's a big difference in what I've looked at as just my lifestyle. I've really tried to live out my lifestyle the best way I can to become the best version of Spencer Mooberry I can. Over the course of the past year, I've had some deep talks with myself, and that's when I kind of flipped the switch a little bit to, wrestling's not everything, and it's kind of becoming a better man and becoming a better wrestler at the same time.
That's huge. I, I feel you on that one. I mean, I think the biggest piece that you just said on that is like, hey, it's you to figure out for yourself. It's
Hmm.
you to figure out for your problems, and being away from home forces that issue, 100%
Yeah.
onto you, and especially, you know, the change from the high school day to the college day. When I know that was my immediate thing, that it's like, oh my gosh, I have so much time on my hands. Like,
Yeah.
going to class for 2.5 hours, and like that's your long day. It's like, pff, man, this is no problem. Like, this is no sweat. Like, I like this a lot. But
Hmm.
it's like, oh, what, I have all this time on my hands. What am I supposed to do? And yeah, some of those conversations and some of those late nights that, like you said, you can't win it tomorrow. And so the little things that you're trying to put in place, and trying to look at it at the furthest scale that you can back, it's tough on most days, because you feel like you're making progress, but it's small progress. So you're trying to scale out, you're trying to see, hey, where's that little blip? Where does this for 2 years? But it's tough when it's the fifth straight day of a cut, or it's been a really brutal week of workouts, and then you had an exam that you were dealing with, and then something else came up. And so, I just understand that feeling of things getting bogged down really, really
Hmm.
quick. And you really think that you're making all this progress and you're doing all this stuff, but yet you look down, and there's no change. And it's tough, and I get you, and I feel that. And I guess that's the I guess probably what is the bigger goal. And it's like, hey, what's our why, and why we, for what we do our everyday menial tasks for.
For
And
sure.
so, if you don't mind, like, what's your why? Like, what's your driving force behind the reason you do all of it? Because, like you said, I mean, it's easy to do, but it's easy not to do. And that's the reason most people aren't great. It's the little things. So, what are your reasons on why you're doing most of it? It takes extra grit and determination to do all of the other extra workouts, and extra pain that you
Yeah.
put yourself through.
Yeah. So I think my why is definitely just because, when I was a little kid, obviously I was a huge wrestling fanatic, and I'd watch every single college wrestling match. And I mean, every match from probably second grade till high school. And that was like, I dreamed of being a kid that could compete at this level. And obviously, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows going through. I mean, I didn't really develop into a high level wrestler until probably my sophomore to senior year of high school. And I mean, that's just the smallest reason of my why, right? It's just like that little version of Spencer was killing to do this, and it's like, but at the end, and then I have so many different people who are in my corner from back small town Iowa. Everybody supports me, my family, my coaches here, and it does, like, you can find yourself in a dark place when you step on the college scene. I mean, it's literally you, and you're going through the dog days. It gets cold, the weather gets bad, you're starting to cut weight, starting to not be able to eat food, and those are called the dog days, right? And that's when you tend to see a lot of people kind of lose faith in themselves and lose faith in the process, but I think it's something to be grateful as well, to be grateful for, because you're able to compete at such a high level, whether it's any division, any middle school, high school, college. It's something to be grateful for, because you're getting that opportunity, and there's a lot of opportunities that kids wish they could have, and they're not able to. And so I think I've just had a lot of time to focus on myself and what I want, and my why, is just like, there's so many people that would dream to live the lifestyle I get to live, and so many people that have my back and support me, where it's like, I feel like I'm letting everybody down if I'm not, and it's like, I know everybody will be happy with me no matter what happens, but it's like, I feel if I sell myself short, if I don't do that extra workout, if I don't go for that run in the morning, if I don't do that, like, I'm not really getting the best version of myself. And I think everybody that supports me and everybody that believes in me and that's been there for me, deserves to see the best version of myself. It's like I'm trying to strive to make it big, to make it whatever. But I want them to at least know that I gave it my all, and I'm chasing the best version of Spencer Mooberry on the mat, off the mat. So it's like I just really think one of the biggest things I just think about when I'm going through those grueling times is just like how many kids are out there that support you. Like I've ran a couple camps this summer already. So many autographs I've signed, pictures taken, and that's just like those kids dream to be you one day. And I think if I sell myself short of who I can be, that's my biggest why is I'm able to ask myself who I can be. And I've had that talk multiple times with different coaches and myself. And, it's just a little bit of a believing process, takes time. And that's just kind of my why is like, I know I can do it. And now it's just get the best version of myself until that point.
That's huge. I know exactly what you mean on that. And it's nice to, I mean, for me, growing up in Texas, wrestling isn't that same,
Mm-hmm.
everyone loves football. I mean, how
Yep.
Iowa treats wrestling is how they treat football. And so for me, like there's a lot of times where it's not like it's like, oh, I was like forced aside or like cast aside, but I mean, people never understood what I was going through. I mean, I was one of the only kids that wrestled in my middle school. And,
Yeah.
I remember the days when, I was cutting weight and, being, and 10, 11, 12 years old and not eating food at lunch when all your friends are eating pizzas and Oreos and Twinkies and
Exactly.
everything else, and you're sitting there not eating, and you're struggling, and you don't want to be there, and you befriend the teachers so you don't have to sit in the cafeteria with your friends, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're short and attitude with everybody because you're hungry all the time, and
Yeah.
you haven't learned how to put that aside and just kind of not think about it. And I think that then ends up being the interesting factor of when that switch flips. And I mean, I just remember mine of finally kind of realizing, like, early on when I was really, getting after it and was really going, it was like, man, I just really wanted to win, a national tournament. And that was the only thing I
Yeah.
could think about. And so for me, it made all of that so much easier. So, having that why and kind of what you were saying, and, having everyone else, it's like, I know how much time my mom spent to bring me to the tournaments. I know how much,
Mm-hmm.
she's the one driving me to every practice. She's the one that's driving me to these workouts. She's there at every camp. She's here at this, like all of this different little things. And it's like, I know exactly what you talk about. Like, there are so many people that have always told you along the way, oh, just stay at it. Oh, just keep going. Oh, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was a one-time passerby that told you something, it's like, I remember that occasion because I've always been a very big believer in everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if some random person walking by had seen me do something and said, "Hey, you're pretty good. I think that you can do whatever," then like that person said that to me for a reason.
Uh-huh.
And like that was a big driving force for whatever sports. And so you and your business world and the business side and the marketing side to kind of make a relative change and switch from
Yep.
the world of wrestling. You
Yeah,
said
so
you said marketing though, right?
yep.
Okay. So I know it's kind of random on this, like BA I know is like the big encompassing side of that, and I remember that's kind of where I started, but
Mm-hmm.
with having the
Yep.
marketing aspect, is there, like you mentioned coaching. So is this one where you kind of want a degree and then you're going to pivot and go do something that has nothing to do with the degree? Or
Well,
is
I was
there,
thinking
or is there
maybe just
something
getting
else
like
that you
an
kind of want to do?
I was thinking maybe getting with like an athletic director high school role and seeing if I was able to coach at the high school level with that. But there's also, with business, there's endless opportunities available and there's endless business looking, just there's so many people out there trying to come up with huge plans for businesses all the time, right? So I think one of the biggest things I've been focused on before I've like focused on an exact career path because I don't know what that completely entails is just kind of building connections and just putting myself out there and talking to people who obviously know what they're doing in the real world outside of uh, the sport of wrestling. And even if it is alumni or people from my hometown that wrestled, I've just been kind of building those connections, resources, so that if I need those connections later in life, like they're always there, never try to burn any bridges. But I think right now my thing is I'm thinking probably athletic director, high school coach when I'm done competing. I don't know when that'll be. I mean, I got 3 years of college eligibility left, but I'd like to compete a little bit more, maybe on the Greco scene or something like that. So we'll see when that all wraps up. But I feel like when I'm done competing, I'm going to miss the sport too much not to at least coach, because I think I love helping people, or I love helping kids who are younger than me, and they look up to me. And I think that's a big piece too when you do graduate from college or you do finish your wrestling career, being able to give back to the sport. That's what makes this world keep going, whether it's in the state of Iowa, whether it's in a different state, but the sport is a small group of people in the real world, you know what I mean? And it's not a hugely popular sport, but if you're able to, grow it in a different area, become a coach somewhere else, grow a program there, get kids out for wrestling, and that's what this sport needs. And I think at the end of the day, I'll probably miss competing or miss being in a wrestling room too much to not coach. So I think that's probably what I'm leaning towards, whether that's an athletic director role and coach, assistant coach on the side or whatever. But I think that's probably what I'm leaning towards right now. But like I said, I'm just keeping connections hot and keep talking to people and not burning any bridges and being an open hand and willing to help people whenever they need it. So yeah.
And I think a big thing with that is in terms of getting the kids out to go wrestle. I mean, there's a lot of lessons that wrestling teaches that
Hmm.
a lot of other sports can't and will never be able to. Um, and having that impact on the kids at a youth level, and the different little things that you said, they look up to you in a way where it's not my place to openly say, oh well, I am a role model, but I have to act as one. Like
Yeah.
there's a different spotlight that is now carried. And
Hmm.
I feel like so many people forget that it's like, hey, yeah, you're right, you maybe didn't choose and openly say I am a role model, I'm doing this for them, but that's kind of the sub contents of what happens. Like, yes, it's not in the job description, but you're required to do it. It's kind of part of the process here.
For sure.
And the ability of giving back to the youth and growing this sport, I think is now kind of the shift in
Hmm.
my perspective of it. And like you said, in terms of giving back, I mean, I can remember when I initially left, all I wanted to do was go back and wrestle. I mean, I hated
Yeah.
folk style still. So like, of course I came back and wrestled freestyle and Greco because that's what I loved.
Uh-huh.
But then it was right back to officiating. So it's like, if I wasn't competing, I was still on the mat. And I, remember officiating junior duels when Dayton Fix was still on Oklahoma at the time. And I got to officiate on mat for him against I forget what his name from Pennsylvania was, but yeah, I got to be an official and judge in
That's
that
pretty
duel,
sweet.
and that was awesome, and that was a bunch of fun. Um, but like those types of events and those types of things that have like this great electric nature, how do you think that we can draw more people to that? Because I know like with some of the stuff I've done on Instagram, it's like there's, people that aren't wrestlers that have kind of picked up on some stuff. But
Hmm.
it's like you said, it's only the wrestlers in this world. It's like, how do you think we can, not to make wrestling mainstream, because like I think people will never understand it to a degree, but
Yeah.
how do you think it can be made to be like more spectator friendly? Like, what do you think can make people show up?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things about like just growing the sport in general is creating excitement about it, right? There's got to be exciting headlines, there's got to be exciting events, and I think that USA Wrestling and some other states have done a pretty good job of just growing the excitement about it, putting out cool venues, whether it's wrestling outside, wrestling on a bar rooftop. Final X is pretty cool, and it's stuff like that. USA Wrestling has kind of almost shifted to the pay-per-view style of things, to where it's like the UFC a little bit, like that Final X when they have their World Team Trials. It's kind of like a pay-per-view event. You know what I mean? It's not all at once. They kind of push it away from everything else, and they kind of make it a pretty big thing. But outside of like the stuff that's already happening, I think the biggest thing is, like what you're doing, what other people are doing on social media, is being able to grow the sport that way and being able to draw attention and by making it exciting, right? And if you can attract the younger generation with excitement and energy, and just that, if they can just, all it takes is one day. Like if they just start a practice, and some of those kids won't like it, some of those kids are going to fall in love with it, right? But that's more numbers than you had. And it's like, I've just always been a guy like, hey, same with like high school football players. It's like, you want to get good at football, you want to learn how to tackle, you go wrestle. Like I try talking to people about that all the time. And it's like, if you can create the excitement's the biggest thing, you know what I mean? Especially for kids that are still undecided what they want to do with their future, it's where you could build excitement around a community and about the sport, and make people be like, oh, like that actually is pretty cool. You know what I mean? And I think just like, I was so grateful to grow up in the state of Iowa, just outside of that aspect. Like now that I'm in North Dakota, I've seen different states and the way their, their high school state tournament looks. And it's like, I was beyond grateful to grow up in a state where it was like that, right? It was like everybody loved it and everybody's excited for it. But I think for those states that struggle with that, and those schools that struggle with that, it's got to start with exciting. And I think these states, they need to come up. So I know Iowa's got IA Wrestle and stuff like that, and those guys do a great job over there. I think it's just like it just takes one person or one group to create an exciting event, and that's the start. And I'm just bought in on, if you can make it exciting for kids and make it exciting for people who aren't already involved in the sport, that's when you're going to be like, people are going to be like, oh, maybe this is what I want to do, or maybe I should go watch this. You know what I mean?
Do you think changing from what the initial sport is and taking elements from it and making a new type of league? So like, let's say you had some type of takedown tournament. Do you think that's a way to make it exciting, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of stuff you can do. Take like just a takedown tournament league, or like, you could almost like branch it off like what the UFC does. They have divisions, and it's like, it is a mixed martial art. It's combat sport, and it's one of the oldest sports to date. And it's like, I think just from the outside perspective, with like near fall and alt reversals and escapes, and like it's just hard for just a normal citizen to walk into a building and like understand and comprehend what's going on, right? So I think if you can do, like you said, a takedown tournament where it's only takedowns, that's the only thing that's getting scored. I think that allows it to be a little bit easier for, the outside of the wrestling world person to be able to pick it up and understand it. And I think I think what a lot of programs and organizations are doing with like how, when COVID happened, they all had like those little duels on Rockfin or whatever, and they were able to do stuff like that. But that's just still staying inside the wrestling world, right? And I think like what you do on social media is probably the biggest way we can actually grow the sport. And I think the takedown tournament's a pretty cool idea. And like, you know, start a little takedown tournament league or whatever that entails. But I think the social media aspect and like influencers and all that on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, I think that's the best option to grow the sport, you know, and I think a lot of people need to relate to that a little bit more. And that's just an easy way to attract, you know, middle school, elementary aged, high school aged kids, you know, because they're going to see your page and they're going to be like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so I just think I'm a big believer in like showing my journey through social media and trying to get people, you know, whether it's motivational or just people like picking up small things from it. And I think that's just another reason or that's another way we can help grow the sport is just by like showing more people, you know, growing the community, expanding, like so people see it on your TikToks and social media. I think that's probably the most beneficial way to grow the sport. But I do think that it'd be really cool if there was like a league where people could follow it a little bit easier. And I know they tried to do that. I forgot what it was called. It was 5, 6 years ago, maybe even more. They tried to do something like that and it kind of just fell through, but it was pretty cool while it lasted. But it was still just standard freestyle wrestling, you know. And I think if you can get like a takedown tournament, that'd be pretty easy for someone to be able to pick up on. So,
All right, I'm gonna kind of throw an idea out there, and so hang
let's hear it.
hang with me. This might get kind of random. So the one FC or the one whatever how they do theirs, how they've got Muay Thai, they've got MMA, how they've got a bunch of different
Mm-hmm.
styles. I think if there was a way to combo a like takedown only tournament and then some kind of like new combo style, like no time limit,
Mm-hmm.
like jujitsu type, and make them like events to where if you took someone who, you know, think about how many guys graduate every year.
Yeah.
How many of those guys would wrestle for another year if they got to wrestle in this league that, you know, traveled
Mm-hmm.
to call it 6 cities a year and did, you know, or, you know, 6 cities in 6 months or whatever. And like you said, break it up into different relative weight classes, do a takedown tournament for a belt, have a separate style tournament, and like bring together different commentators and different media, and then basically broadcast it and advertise it on social media. And like that be like I don't know what you could call it, but some type of something championships is all I think you need to have in
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a pretty sweet idea when you think about it. It allows people to, you know, wrestlers and athletes when they're done with their college careers aren't really done. Like it's hard not to still be super competitive, right? And you're gonna miss it. And like when I was done with high school football, you know, you missed Friday night lights and it's just stuff like that. So it's like where you'd be able to attract people, even people who are out of college for a while, or like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you know, they still miss the sport. And it's like if you were able to come up with a blueprint and an idea to where you could attract enough people, I think that'd be a super successful idea to where it's like it'd
Because
be
then,
worth it,
yeah, then
you
it's
know.
just about
So
reaching out to enough wrestlers. I think if the progress goes, if we were able to reach out to enough wrestlers, that would
mm-hmm.
be the biggest thing. If you know,
Yeah.
if you looked at, hey, I'm going to reach out to every Power Five and every Group of Five school that has a wrestling program,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send a message to every guy who just left. I mean, you can get a couple hundred guys that would get a message. I mean, let's call it half of them would say yes. And
Yeah.
then, you go, okay, let's send a message to every person in the last 4 years who's wrestled. I mean,
Hmm.
you start looking at, a couple thousand guys,
Yeah.
you really only need uh, probably 8 per weight class would be perfect.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely doable. And then the next thing would probably have to be, drawing enough attention to it, like advertisement wise, and being able to create that excitement as a fan base, or be able to get people who are willing to go
Well,
watch, or all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? I think that'd be the next step. I think it's very doable. I mean, I know there's
get
this
some
group in
big
Iowa. It's
names.
called Stalemates Show. I don't know if you know who they are, but they did like, it wasn't high school or college wrestlers. It was like alumni and like older people that have been out of college for a couple of years. They did like a couple dual meets where whether it was a kid who graduated high school 4 years ago and didn't wrestle in college, or a kid who just graduated college wrestling, like they did like a couple dual meets where stuff like that, and they were able to attract some of the bigger names, that have been out of the sport for 3 or 4 years, but were Division I wrestlers and national qualifiers, and they were kind of like the headliners of it, right? So they'd get like one big matchup, and they'd kind of they'd make like a poster for each individual bout, and they did a pretty good job with that. And now they've kind of turned to your podcasts and like video content more than that. But I know like right after COVID is when, or maybe even before, but they had a couple. I think it's called Stalemate Street League. I think they did 2 or 3 of them, and they had some pretty big alumni. Like it was no like current wrestlers. I think that was like one of the rules. So, but it was like people right out of college or right off the college scene, or people who were state champions and then didn't wrestle in college, and they had a lot of people watch that. I know they did a pretty good job, and I think they sold out a little arena or something for it and everything. So that was pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely doable because people always have the itch to compete. Especially a wrestler. I feel like when you go through,
Yeah, you tell someone, "Hey, here's another chance to put on the shoes." Man, they're
yeah,
gonna they're gonna they're gonna jump at that chance.
because they
Because
go through so much for their whole lifetime. It's like so hard to quit. You know what I mean?
well, there's nothing after college. I mean,
Uh huh.
like at least with football, like if you're done with football, you can go play semi-pro.
Yeah.
If you can always play tennis, you can always play golf, you can relatively always play baseball. Like there's tons of adult leagues. You can play softball, you can play soccer, but like unless you make the switch and go to jujitsu or like some type of striking,
Hmm.
man, you can't just go wrestle. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing. So I think, and I've always, thought about, the different open tournaments and different things that happen,
Hmm.
but there's not really any of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a small number, and I mean it's kind of hard. Like they're not advertised very well either, and it's like if you're not a college coach or haven't been going there for years, it's kind of hard to be able to pick up on them. But there's a decent amount of opens, but it's also like most of the time there's maybe one guy that's out of college in your bracket. You know what I mean? So I
right.
think because they know, like if you're there's no point in somebody, you know what I mean? It's like so hard for somebody to be like, oh, let me go wrestle kids that are wrestling every day. But if it was like an open tournament just for alumni or just for kids who just graduated college, like then it'd be a little bit different, If like a guy who's been out of college for 5 years is gonna obviously doubt himself signing up for a college open tournament because he's wrestling college kids that train all year round. So it's like, but if there was like a league, like what you said, I think you'd be able to attract even more. Like these opens are, you attract a couple people, that are just missing the sport and want to throw their shoes on and see what they got. But it's like, I think it also kind of scares people away knowing that, you're wrestling a kid that's still in his like prime, you know what I mean? He's still physically healthy, physically fit all the time. And it's not like he's taking any time off. So I think that kind of scares away like your alumni a little bit, or people who are just miss the sport. a little bit because they know they're gonna have to wrestle some of the highest level guys in the country, or you know what I mean. They're competing. There's not very many people that wrestle Division One, Division Two, Division 3. Like there's, I think it's like I saw like 15% of or 15% of wrestlers go to college to wrestle. So it's like, you know what I mean. It's just like if you go to an open, you know you're wrestling somebody that's obviously pretty dedicated to the sport, and if you're not bought in all the way, I think that kind of scares some people away from them.
Right. You still there?